In this video, we're going to talk about how to stop getting shaky footage on your Sony ZV-E10. Now, if you have a ZV-E10 or have been watching videos on it, then you know that this camera was released as a vlogging camera with the slogan "Creative Made Easy" or "Vlogging Made Easy." Now, although that's the case, I've seen at least 4 trillion questions regarding stabilization on the Sony ZV-E10. Now, if you don't know, the E10 doesn't have IBIS or in-body image stabilization. Instead, it has a few other options for stabilization. Now, the first one is called active stabilization. And this is when the ZV-E10 crops in on an image and stabilizes it by shifting the image around so that it appears steady. Now, it has to crop in because if not, you would see the edge of the picture doing this crazy thing right here, and you don't want that. Now, the next form of stabilization is something called standard. Now, what standard does is it actually uses OSS or optical steady shot. Exclusive to Sony lenses, the lens element will actually move around to compensate for shakes, bumps, and vibration. Now, this is the mode I prefer the most and that I use the most because it's just really easy to deal with and you don't have to worry about any cropping in or anything like that. And it works pretty well. Now, the last form of stabilization is just off. Yeah, that's what they named it, just off. Just off. Now, with off, it actually turns on the gyroscope that's built into the Sony ZV-E10. And it's pretty crazy how this thing works. The gyroscope acts like a digital gimbal, except the sensor doesn't actually move. Instead, the E10 captures the orientation of the sensor and it puts that data into the video called metadata. And then you use a program called Catalyst Browse, which can read that metadata and work out how to stabilize the picture. Now, with this program, you have to crop in a little bit, but it gives you a really good outcome. Now, some people don't like this program because you can't do batch files, which means you can't throw a bunch of files in there and have it just stabilize all those files at once. You have to put each file in one by one. Now, I don't know if this is something that Sony is going to change or if this is just the way it is. Now, if you tried all of these methods and you still can't get a steady shot, then I'm going to give you 6 tips that should help you to get a steady shot with the Sony ZV-E10. Now, the first one is to add weight. Now, I know you may be thinking,
wait a minute, the whole point of me getting this ZV-E10 is because it's lightweight. Now you're telling me I gotta add weights to it? What sense does that make?
It doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense, but it does. Because it doesn't have a lot of mass to it, any little shake or any little vibration is gonna show up on screen. Now, with adding weight, what you're doing is just adding mass to the camera. And mass just allows it to be a little bit heavier, and it makes it so that the camera doesn't pick up all the little micro jitters and all the little shakes that your hands may have. Now, what I have on my setup is this cage that I got from SmallRig, and then I have that connected to a quick release plate, and then that quick release plate is connected to a ball head, and then there is a tripod or tripod legs that's connected to the actual ball head. Now, I know that might sound like a lot, but I have all that in the description below if you want to take a look at it. But what this does is not only add weight to the camera, but it actually gives you a good way to hold it. Now, the second way to get more stable footage is to use a wider lens. If you look at these 2 images side by side, the one that's closer is going to look a lot more shaky than the one that is farther away. So just simply using another lens can make a huge difference. Now, if you're vlogging, I recommend something like the Sigma 16mm 1.4 or the Rokinin 12mm 2.0. And that's the one that comes with autofocus. Now, I have that in the description below, both those lenses. I also recommend the Sony 18-105. This is a zoom lens, but it also has OSS built into it. And I just think it gives a really nice look and it can cover a pretty large focal range with that. So check that out in the description below. Number 3 kind of goes with the last lens that I mentioned, which is use a lens that has OSS or Sony's optical steady shot. Again, we talked about what steady shot was, but the lens elements inside of the lens actually move around. And the Sony 18-105 actually has OSS built in. The kit lens also has that built in as well, the 16-50 kit lens. So you want to check that out. I'll put that in the description below. But by using OSS, again, this gives you a way to stabilize the footage right away. You don't have to do any post-processing. You're not cropping in on your image at all. The lens is doing all of the work for you. And I think it looks pretty good. Now, number 4 is to buy a gimbal. Now, I know you may be saying,
The whole point of buying this camera is so that I didn't have to get all these big accessories and things like that.
and you're absolutely right. If you really, really want super smooth, stable footage, then looking into a gimbal may help you. DJI has some good ones. Zhiyun or Zhiyun, they have some pretty good ones as well that are pretty small. Now, I personally don't use a gimbal for vlogging. I use one when I'm doing professional work, just because I don't want to have to hold all of that stuff and carry that stuff around when I'm vlogging. Vlogging is about keeping things simple, so that's what I like to do. But if you really, really want super smooth, stable footage, then looking into a gimbal may help you. Now, number 5 is to use a tripod with a ball head on it. Now, what this does is allow the weight of the camera to be distributed more evenly. So you're not trying to hold it in your hand. You can just grip it in your hand, and this makes it a lot simpler to keep it steady. Not only does it make it smoother, but you can also get different angles that you maybe would not be able to get before. You can pan around quicker, and then you can put it back on you. It just makes things a lot easier. Now, number 6 is something that you have to do physically, and that is adjusting your walk. Now, I know that may not seem like something that you want to do. Like, why should I have to adjust my walk? Cameras are good enough now to where I should be able to just walk and not worry about stabilization. Well, if you want to get stable footage, then you're gonna have to walk differently. That's just the way it is. Even professional cameras, when they're using steady cams and things like that, they have to walk in such a way that they don't get the bounce and all the movement in the actual steady cam that they're using. So just don't walk like you're crazy. Don't lose your mind with it. Now, one of the things I like to do is just take a cup of water, fill it all the way up to the top, and see if you can walk around with it without spilling.
Peaceful social being is preferable to isolation and to war.
I can make it. I can make it. I definitely can make it. I know I'm gonna make it. I'm definitely gonna make it. I might not make it. I don't think I'm gonna make it. I can make it. I got this. I got this. Yeah, I got this. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it. I don't know if I'm gonna make it. I'm definitely not gonna make it. I'm failing right now. I'm not gonna make it. Now, you don't have to do a duck walk or anything crazy like that, but just be mindful of your steps. And you'll realize that you probably walk a lot rougher than you actually need to walk, and it may save your D's anyway. You don't want to depend on technology so much that you think that there's no work for you to do. You want the camera to do it all. Well, that day is coming, but it isn't quite here yet. Now, the Sony ZV-E10 is not an expensive camera, so it's not gonna have all the bells and whistles that some of the other cameras have, like IBIS and things like that. But you can get quality footage, smooth footage out of this camera if you take the time to learn how to walk, add weight to the camera, utilize the different functions inside of the camera for stability, and you'll be surprised what you can actually get out of this. But don't expect just to pull this out of the box and it just be buttery smooth, because that's not gonna happen. With some shots you may, but not all shots. Now, the last thing I will say is this: not every single shot has to be super buttery smooth. It just doesn't. Sometimes shakiness, sometimes just the realness of what you're shooting is more important than this smooth robotic footage. Sometimes smooth footage can actually be boring. So keep that in mind. If you want to get good with this ZV-E10, then you're going to have to practice. There's just no way around it. You have to take the time to take this camera out, walk around with it, shoot different things with it, and just experiment with it. And the more comfortable you get with it in your hands, the more efficient, the more smooth, and the better your shots are gonna be overall. That's for photos and video. Was this video beneficial to you? Leave a comment below, and if you like the video, then like it, because that helps it in the algorithm, and I wanna help as many people as I can. But until next time, I'll holla at y'all later. I'm out. Peace.